Hello and welcome to Uzreport World News, and my name is Bahram Gaffarov. The Uzbek and Pakistani governments are planning to jointly boost trade turnover. The two countries agreed on this at the summit organized between the President of Uzbekistan and the Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan.
At the beginning of the conversation, the two leaders exchanged sincere congratulations on the beginning of the holy month of Ramadan, wishing the friendly peoples peace and prosperity. The sides analyzed the strategic project for the construction of the Trans-Afghan Railway. During the online meeting, the main tasks were discussed in detail and priority measures were identified to deepen partnership and practical cooperation between Uzbekistan and Pakistan. The schedule of upcoming events has been agreed. The agreement was reached to take additional measures to promote priority projects in the field of transport and transit, to create favorable conditions for increasing trade turnover and strengthening industrial cooperation. Following the meeting, the sides adopted a joint statement and signed a number of important documents in the field of meteorology, agriculture, and other areas.
Uzbekistan is planning to open its diplomatic mission in Sweden. This was announced during the visit of OSCE Chair in Office Swedish Foreign Minister Ann Linde to Tashkent.
President Shavkat Mirziyoyev signed a decree on the establishment of a full-fledged diplomatic mission of Uzbekistan in Sweden. The activities of the new embassy will be aimed at developing bilateral relations and practical interaction with both Sweden and the rest of the Scandinavian states. The primary tasks of the diplomatic mission are strengthening partnerships and building up trade and economic cooperation, attracting innovations, investments and technologies from leading European companies, as well as in-depth study and development of recommendations for the implementation of advanced Scandinavian experience in the field of education. At the same time, it is reported about the termination of the activities of the diplomatic mission of Uzbekistan in essence.
Mitsubishi Power, a subsidiary of Mitsubishi Heavy Industries Group, has received an order for two M701 JAC gas turbines, the company's latest model in its A-Cool J series for 1,500 megawatt class natural gas-fired GTCC power plant under construction in Uzbekistan's Sirdarya region. The order follows the conclusion of an equipment supply agreement for the Sirdarya project between ACWA Power, a leading Saudi developer, investor and operator of power and water desalination assets in 13 countries worldwide, and China Gedroba Group Co. Ltd as the appointed project EPC contractor. The $1 billion plant upon the completion is to annually generate up to 10 billion kilowatts hour of electricity. The volume of gross gold and foreign exchange reserves of Uzbekistan as of April 1st stood at $32 billion, having decreased by $590 million over the months. Since the beginning of the year, the indicator has dipped by $2 billion, according to data from Central Bank.
Net foreign exchange reserves went down by $771 million to $31.6 billion. The country's gold and foreign exchange reserves have been declining for the third month in a row. In March, gold reserves rose by 0.2 million troy ounces, with the total number reaching 11.4 million ounces. However, the value of these reserves dipped by $450.9 million as this precious metal became cheaper in March. On March the 1st, the price of gold was $1,738.8 per ounce. On March the 30th, it fell to $1,687.8, and then by April the 1st, it went up to $1,729.3. Uzbekistan's foreign currency reserves also decreased by $132.4 million.
The economic opportunities and problems of Central Asia and the Caucasus after COVID-19 pandemic were on agenda at a recent video conference organized by the International Monetary Fund. My colleague has the details.
The conference began with a discussion of the report on the region by the Deputy Director of Middle East and Central Asian Countries Department of the IMF. Sabir Lal presented the analysis of vaccination in the region. It was also said that the countries started the vaccination process early will be able to stabilize their economies faster, which will directly affect GDP growth.
Obviously, the ultimate goal is to improve the healthcare situation, to save the lives. But at the same time, in long run, we should focus on the fiscal sustainability. So this policy advice, how in short term, let us countries to focus on these short-term policy goals, which are very important, and nobody can assume that they can, starting from this year, suddenly to sharply decrease their expenditure and deficits. But at the same time, keep in mind how to keep financial sustainability, fiscal sustainability in the long run. What I think is that it will be very important to help us to find this balance between these two issues. Another is that to support countries to improve governance and transparency, for example, in public procurement system. For example, in our case, we have started to improve transparency in public management, in public finance management, especially in public procurement system. We had a lot of steps. But what is next? It's not just about the publishing all the data, but how to make this transparency really lead to efficiency of the usage of the public finance. Because given this situation, given the restrictions in the future borrowings, I think it becomes very important to make sure that the existing money, existing financial resources will be used in a more efficient way. So here the IMF could help with the capacity building program as usual, because the quality of the policy decision is always depend on the quality of the staff, quality of the statistics, and the technical analysis. And lastly, if countries in the region want to keep this sustainable growth, we have to boost the structural reforms. And in this area, I think the IMF and other IFI's assistance can be vital in providing advice on the right sequencing of this reform in this current difficult situation. Now we have less probably fiscal space to do some steps which we planned before. And we had some areas, some sectors of economy who are adversely affected by the crisis. So this right sequencing in which area we should start with structural reforms, maybe where we have to change our plans, I think it's very important, and IMF's advice would be very useful, I think. Thank you.
In turn, the Special Representative of the European Union for Central Asia spoke about what is holding back the countries of the region from deeper integration into the global economy.
The problem is a slow progress in the implementation of reforms, which is also connected with lack of administrative, human and financial resources, or sometimes wasteful use of resources for projects lacking economic viability and environmental sustainability. And last but not least, a lot of resources is absorbed by corruption. We believe that if the region wants to become more resilient, prosperous, and more attractive for investors, it needs to speed up structural reforms that would change the fabric of their economies and improve regulatory framework in which business and people operate.
Uzbekistan Central Election Commission on Wednesday approved a program of measures to prepare for the presidential elections, which are scheduled for October 24 of this year, the press service reports.
In February 2021, the Senate approved legislative amendments to postpone presidential elections from the first Sunday of the third decade of December to the first Sunday of the first decade of October. The elections are to be held based on the Electoral Code. Besides, activities of district and precinct election commissions, as well as the procedures for the conduction of presidential election campaigns, have been determined. Following the new rules, citizens of Uzbekistan living abroad are to be included in the voter list, regardless of their consular registration in diplomatic missions. They would also gain the right to vote in the portable ballot boxes at their place of residence and work.
Uzbek citizens would be granted more opportunities in budget allocation. Following the statement of the Republic's Ministry of Finance, soon it would be feasible to participate in the processes of budget formation and expenditure. Starting from May, in 14 districts and cities of Uzbekistan, some 5% of budgetary expenditure would be allocated to measures based on public opinion. Starting from 2022, this procedure would be introduced throughout the Republic.
As of July, the minimum budget allocated for citizen participation will be increased from 10% to 30%. The process of channeling funds to finance public opinion activities would take place twice a year, before the 1st of February and the 15th of July. The funds are accumulated in the Treasury's personal accounts of the Civil Initiatives Fund, which is not to be used for other purposes. District and city administrations must post information about financing on their official website and open budget portal every quarter.
The day after South Africa suspended a rollout of Johnson & Johnson vaccines, and the country's health minister, Zweli Mkhize, has criticised the terms under which they were bought as onerous. On Tuesday, Mkhize announced that the government had paused J&J immunisations, citing a recommendation by US federal health agencies because of rare cases of blood clots.
Based on their advice, we have determined to voluntarily suspend our rollout until the causal relationship between the development of clots and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is sufficiently interrogated.
On Wednesday, Mkhize said South Africa's down payments to Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer are not refundable under any circumstances, a consequence he attributed to difficult and sometimes unreasonable demands from vaccine manufacturers. South Africa had been put in the precarious position, he said, of having to choose between saving our citizens' lives and risking putting the country's assets into private companies' hands. The government is paying $10 per dose of the J&J and Pfizer vaccines, he added. The J&J suspension is the latest setback for South Africa's efforts to immunise its population. It ditched plans to kickstart vaccinations with AstraZeneca's vaccine in February. That was after a small trial showed the shot offered minimal protection against mild to moderate illness from the dominant local coronavirus variant. In Johannesburg, there were mixed reactions to the J&J decision.
I don't think it's a good idea because we need it. We need to be vaccinated so we can survive.
It's a good thing, I'll say, because it can save lives.
South Africa's drugs regulator said on Wednesday that it had recently reviewed data from Johnson & Johnson's local research study and found no major safety concerns.
And it's time to end the forever war.
President Joe Biden said on Wednesday he will begin withdrawing the last U.S. troops from Afghanistan on May 1st to end America's longest war, rejecting calls for U.S. forces to stay to ensure a peaceful resolution to that nation's grinding internal conflict. In a White House speech, Biden set a deadline for withdrawing all 2,500 U.S. troops remaining in Afghanistan by September 11th, exactly 20 years after al-Qaeda's attacks on the United States.
War in Afghanistan was never meant to be a multi-generational undertaking. I said, among with others, we'd follow Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell if need be. That's exactly what we did, and we got him. That was 10 years ago.
The Democratic president had faced a May 1st withdrawal deadline set by his Republican predecessor Donald Trump, who tried but failed to pull the troops out before leaving office in January. But by pulling out without a clear victory, the United States opens itself to criticism that a withdrawal represents a de facto admission of failure for American military strategy. One such critic is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
The result of this decision today by President Biden is to cancel an insurance policy that, in my view, would prevent another 9/11.
Foreign troops under NATO command will also withdraw from Afghanistan in coordination with the U.S. Meeting in Brussels with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said it would now be up to Afghanistan to secure peace.
We went into Afghanistan together. We have adjusted our posture together. And we are united in leaving together.
Afghan President Ashraf Ghani wrote on Twitter that he spoke with Biden and respects the U.S. decision. Successive U.S. presidents sought to extricate themselves from Afghanistan, but those hopes were complicated by concerns about Afghan security forces, endemic corruption in Afghanistan, and the resiliency of the Taliban. But Biden made clear Wednesday it would end with him.
I'm now the fourth United States president to preside over American troop presence in Afghanistan. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. I will not pass this responsibility on to a 5th.
This was done in an abundance of caution.
President Biden's chief medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, urged Americans to get vaccinated against COVID-19 on Wednesday, saying U.S. regulators pause on Johnson & Johnson shots following reports it can cause rare blood clotting should boost trust in the vaccine's safety, giving Americans more confidence, not less.
It should reinforce in those individuals how we take safety so seriously. So as opposed to looking this as a negative safety issue, it could be looked at as a positive issue.
On Tuesday, U.S. federal health agencies recommended pausing use of J&J's single-dose COVID-19 vaccine for at least a few days after 6 women under 50 developed rare blood clots after getting the shot. White House COVID-19 response coordinator Jeff Zients on Wednesday reassured Americans that the J&J pause will not affect overall vaccine supply.
The J&J vaccine makes up less than 5% of the more than 190 million recorded shots in the arms in the U.S. to date. Importantly, this means we have more than enough supply of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines to continue the current pace of vaccinations, meet the president's goal of 200 million shots by his 100th day in office, and continue to reach every adult who wants to be vaccinated by the end of May. We are working now with our state and federal partners to get anyone currently scheduled for a J&J vaccine quickly rescheduled for a Pfizer or Moderna vaccine.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
The CDC's immunization panel on Wednesday reviewed the clotting cases and planned to make recommendations. The FDA said the J&J halt was needed to help physicians understand how to recognize and treat the issue, as a standard treatment for clotting could cause serious complications or death. The 6 cases were reported out of more than 7 million U.S. doses of the J&J vaccine that have been administered, a risk federal officials said was extremely low. Similar rare brain blood clots have been reported with AstraZeneca's vaccine in Europe, where it was decided the shot's benefits outweigh the clotting risk. There had been no reported blood clot cases related to the Moderna or Pfizer shots, and health officials are urging Americans to keep their vaccine appointments.
Researchers in Brazil, where a surging death toll is causing international alarm, found that the country's P1 coronavirus variant is mutating in ways that could make it more resistant to vaccines. The study, conducted by the Public Health Institute Fiocruz and released this week, found mutations in the spike region of the virus where it can enter and infect the body cells. That's particularly troublesome, said one of the study's authors, who explained that this creates another escape mechanism for the virus to evade the responses of antibodies. The P1 variant, which has quickly become dominant in Brazil, is thought to be a large factor behind a massive second wave that has brought the country's death toll to over 350,000, the second highest in the world behind the United States. Brazil's outbreak is also increasingly affecting younger people, with hospital data showing that in March, more than half of all patients in intensive care were aged 40 or younger. São Paulo Health Secretary Jean Gorenstein.
In the first wave, we saw mainly older people, but this is not what we're seeing now. It's a disease that has shown itself to be more aggressive, particularly in young people, since these young people are putting off going to the hospital because they're more relaxed about the illness because they are young. So they arrive in much more serious condition.
São Paulo, Brazil's richest and most populous state, has warned that its ability to care for seriously ill COVID-19 patients was on the verge of collapse as it ran dangerously low on key drugs, according to a report Wednesday in the country's largest newspaper. President Jair Bolsonaro has been widely criticized for his handling of the pandemic, including downplaying the disease's severity, promoting dubious treatments, and repeatedly opposing social distancing measures. Experts say his handling of the outbreak has encouraged the virus to run rampant. São Paulo Governor João Doria.
It is very sad. We should have leadership from the federal government, an organized public health process, national coordination. We have a lack of national coordination, disregard for transparency, and even hostility toward the press.
Brazil's Supreme Court confirmed on Wednesday an earlier decision by one of its judges that the Senate install a committee to investigate the federal government's response to the coronavirus pandemic.
Bernie Madoff, convicted of running the largest known Ponzi scheme in history, died Wednesday in federal prison where he was serving a 150-year sentence.
Mr. Madoff, when are you going to say something to the victims?
He'd been incarcerated in Butner, North Carolina, after he was sentenced in 2009 for engineering a fraud estimated as high as $64.8 billion. He was 82 years old. Madoff's thousands of victims included individuals big and small, charities, pension funds, and hedge funds. Among those betrayed were actors Kevin Bacon, Kyra Sedgwick, and John Malkovich, Baseball Hall of Fame pitcher Sandy Koufax, and a charity associated with Hollywood director Steven Spielberg. Nobel Prize winner Elie Wiesel's foundation lost more than $15 million in Madoff's fraud. Quote, "We thought he was God. We trusted everything in his hands," Wiesel said in 2009. For decades, Madoff ran his scheme out of a midtown Manhattan tower known as the Lipstick Building, lying to his clients about trades he never made and returns that didn't exist, while duping new clients into handing over their wealth. The money helped Madoff and his wife Ruth enjoy luxuries such as a Manhattan penthouse, a French villa, and expensive cars and yachts, with a combined net worth of about $825 million. The scheme collapsed when the 2008 financial crisis drove his investors to try and cash out, but their money was gone. Ruth Madoff was never charged. She said she felt her husband had betrayed her after nearly a half-century of marriage. Their son Mark died by suicide in 2010 on the second anniversary of his father's arrest. Their other son Andrew died of cancer in 2014. No immediate members of his family were in court when he was sentenced to a century and a half behind bars. Madoff addressed his victims in attendance, saying, "I am sorry. I know that doesn't help you."
Mr. Floyd died of a cardiac arrhythmia due to hypertensive atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease during the restraint.
The defense's medical expert in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin told the jury on Wednesday that he believed George Floyd's death during his arrest was the result of heart disease and said it was possible that exhaust fumes could have played a role.
There is exposure to a vehicle exhaust, so potentially carbon monoxide poisoning.
Dr. David Fowler, who was Maryland's chief medical examiner until his retirement in 2019, appeared to dispute at least some of the findings of Hennepin County's chief medical examiner, who ruled Floyd's death a homicide, and said he would fall back to an undetermined ruling.
So this is one of those cases where you have so many conflicting different manners. The carbon monoxide would usually be classified as an accident.
Fowler testified that the fentanyl and methamphetamine found in Floyd's blood may also have contributed to his death, along with possible carbon monoxide poisoning from exhaust fumes from the vehicle next to where Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes.
You haven't seen any data or test results that showed Mr. Floyd had a single injury from carbon monoxide. Is that true?
That is correct, because it was never sent to the laboratory for that test.
I asked you whether it was true, sir. Yes or no?
It is true.
In cross-examination, the prosecution grilled Fowler, who conceded that he did not know for certain whether the police car was still running during the arrest, and he agreed with prosecutor Jerry Blackwell that Floyd should have been given immediate first aid.
As a physician, I would agree.
Hate crime legislation aimed at combating anti-Asian violence easily advanced through the U.S. Senate on Wednesday. The bill, led by Democratic Senator Mazie Hirono and Congresswoman Grace Meng, comes after a spate of high-profile attacks on Asian Americans. Senators decided to advance the bill on Wednesday, easily clearing the chamber's filibuster rule by a bipartisan vote of 92-6. The bill will designate a Justice Department employee to expedite the review of hate crimes being reported to police. It would also provide guidance for state and local law enforcement agencies to report hate crimes and expand public education campaigns on how to combat discriminatory language. Reports of anti-Asian discrimination and violence have surged during the pandemic after former President Donald Trump started calling the coronavirus the China virus. Hirono said she was working with Republican Senator Susan Collins on additional language to broaden support for the bill. and supported a bipartisan amendment which would train law enforcement agencies on hate crime investigations and expand resources for victims. It was not immediately clear when the Senate would vote on final passage of the bill. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Tuesday that the goal was to pass it by the end of the week, according to a Democratic Senate source in the meeting.
A blockbuster start to earnings season gave the Dow a minor lift, but the rest of the market struggled due to weak tech stocks. There was also a mega market debut of Bitcoin exchange Coinbase in the mix. The Dow rose 53 points. The S&P 500 stumbled 16 points after touching an intraday high. The Nasdaq lost 138 points. JP Morgan Chase smashed forecasts with a near 400% surge in quarterly profits, and America's biggest bank released $5 billion that it had set aside in case loans went bad during the health crisis. But with the stock up nearly 60% over the past year, some investors thought the good news was already priced into the stock, which fell nearly 2% on Wednesday. It was a bang-up quarter for Goldman Sachs as well. It saw a massive jump in profits as it benefited from record global deal-making. Revenue and profits hit a record, and the company hinted that there's more to come. Shares of Goldman jumped more than 2%. A big turnaround for the embattled Wells Fargo. It bounced back to a quarterly profit of almost $5 billion. Shares of Wells Fargo gained 5.5%. But the stock of the day was Coinbase. The world's largest cryptocurrency exchange soared in a milestone debut for the crypto industry. For Ross Gerber of Gerber Kawasaki, the importance of this debut cannot be overlooked.
I think this is a huge moment in financial history. It's the first time we've seen an exchange and a decentralized monetary system that has really been a threat to the current monetary systems for its entire existence now becoming legitimized. And I think a new era has begun for what we would like to call decentralized finance or cryptocurrencies. Even the listing of tokens now of actual stocks is happening on the Binance exchange. And you know, when you see how these networks work and how sophisticated these companies are, it kind of makes the JP Morgans of the world look like dinosaurs.
Coinbase ended its first trading day with a 31% jump, well off its highs of the day.
Tesco, Britain's biggest retailer, reported a 20% drop in full-year pre-tax profit on Wednesday, as the cost of adapting the business for the pandemic wiped out its exceptionally strong sales. Lockdowns boosted demand, though, as restaurants and cafes shut and shoppers stocked up to eat at home. Many also had to work from home, adding to strong sales for Tesco, as well as its three major UK rivals, Sainsbury's, Asda and Morrisons. But that rapid shift to serving people online cost more than $1.2 million in Britain alone, hitting the company's bottom line. Supermarkets had to stump up for additional workers, staff sick pay, and in-store measures to deal with the pandemic. Profit before tax came in at $1.1 million, down nearly 20% on the year before. Chief Executive Ken Murphy said Tesco had shown strength and agility and doubled the size of its online business. Tesco said that while some of the additional sales volumes would fall away as restrictions ease, it expected a strong recovery, and that most of the past year's extra costs would be a one-off.
So far, these have been the latest news for today. Goodbye, take care.